Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Kyle Williams here. As always, the only YouTube videos I ever make. I don't know, I like starting this silly intro. If you watched last monthly recap, I start this intro differently. Not really, it's always the same. April is over. Or sorry, not April. May is over. Forgive me. Great month of $179,000, $115.18. Really happy with this month. However, I will also put on a caveat that if you watch the end of last month's recap, it resulted in quite a heavy loss of pretty much finishing the last week 85K, down 85K, finishing the month just up over or just under 40K. However, but prior to this week, I was up, call it 140, 130. I guess after borrow fees, right? And so that kind of stung. Now, so it looks good that I'm up 180 this month of May, or this past month of May. However, the majority of this week, not the majority, but really the majority of Thursday, the 4th, was really just making back what I had lost this week. And we'll go into the trades and I'll show you what you mean. But you kind of have to watch April to understand May here. So if you haven't done that, go back and watch that video. Come back and I will pretty much begin right where we left off at the end of that video. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about it. In terms of the overall month, like I mentioned, I was going to go on vacation. I mean, not I was. I did. I went to Italy from the 13th of May all the way till the 28th. So I got back on the 28th. Of course, the market was closed the 29th. And then I actually got back to my desk for these 2 days. These 2 days here, I traded on my phone. And then as well as this day and this day I traded on my phone. I actually got back to the close this day at my desk. But this day I was on my phone pretty much the entire time. Actually, I think I got to by the last hour of the day, I got to my desk here as well. But anyways, we'll go into it. So it's pretty. The point is a little bit different of a month. It's not like every month is my first week I've made my entire month, but I'm also glad it happened that way because, like I said, the next 3 weeks or the 4 weeks of the month were just iffy. Again, I was preparing to travel, or I was traveling. I was coming back from traveling, right? It was not a very consistent schedule, I should say, of how I normally do things, right? As you can see, I think this is probably the first week I haven't placed a trade in probably at least a year, maybe 2, maybe more, honestly. So that's new for me. But again, I couldn't have been more happy to go to Italy. It was an incredible time. And yeah, and I heard when I got back that I didn't miss anything. I didn't miss much anyway. So I'm glad to have done that. Anyways, let's jump right in. Let's go to the 1st of May. What the heck happened to result in such a large day to start off the month? Again, at the end of April, what happened was that top went berserk, right? Top went nuts, going from, call it $7 all the way up to a high of 250. That kind of caught wind and got all these sympathies to join the party. Now, by sympathies, I mean other former China scams. So HDII was one. Another one was like MEGL. There was dozens. It turned to a whole craze. GDC was one, which I'll talk about in a bit. But a bunch of them started going nuts. HDII was one of them. If you remember me, actually, one of my last few trades in April was where I got short HDII, covered for a small loss, and then missed a ton of downside. So if we actually go to the 28th, just to re-jog your memory here, in April I had mentioned the trade that I was taking. I said I got short here, covered in this last pop, and then watched this thing fade dollars a share in after hours, like pretty much leaving 10 to 20K on the table had I held for even sub $10, right? So that sucked. However, I knew going to the next day, now this was really backside, and now that top was kind of also beginning to be backside as well. I knew HUDI being a sympathy was not going to end well. I but I had a very high chance or high probability, in my opinion, that this was going to die very nicely. So let's see actually if we can get it in a 30-day or a 1 month first before I go to intraday or just select a day. So yeah, I can't get it. It's on the 1st. So let's just go here, custom. Stay with me here for a second. 1st of May. So here it is, right? And so we had a huge gap down, right? The previous day it closed at like, say, 13, 14. We sold off to 8 or 9 in after hours, and what do you know? We're opening right back up at that level at 850. And even you'd think, and in most cases, if you've heard me talk about overextended gap downs, I hate them because I don't like how high red green is away from them, especially if they're on a big gap down. And unfortunately here, and contradictory to that opinion of mine, HDII was a huge gap down, right? It was closed at 13. It's gapping down at 850. 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to take that trade because there's so much upside to the red green level. I don't want to take that. However, again, because I knew top was kind of the leader and because top was now backside, it wasn't going to go back over to 240, right? In HDII being sympathy, I had a high conviction that this was probably going to fade right back to where it came from because there was really no point for it to start anyway, besides top being hot, right? It's sector momentum at its finest. So if we actually go into my trades here, make this bigger so you can see it. Again, got all short in this choppiness here. I did think it was going to go higher. Originally, I wanted to risk, or I did risk 9. I wanted this. I like this little triple top here in pre-market. Eventually, I did move it down to 850 after a double topped here. But again, to add to the complexity of all this, after the first hour, I had to leave. I had to go on my phone, so I pretty much put stop losses in. Also, kind of kept it on just a chart up on my phone, like leaning on my dash, right? Not in front of my dash, on like the little corner, right? I would never recommend trading and driving at all. But for reference, I also own a Tesla. So when I was on the freeway, just autopilot and then was able to kind of maybe look an extra second or two, right? But on top of that, and we'll get into even more further complex beyond that actually helped me in this. So while I'm driving, I'm just trying to just monitor it. I can't really do much. I'm letting the stop loss and just trade plan play out itself, etc. But eventually, when I get back, right, it actually it keeps working. Right, this little bounce, I thought I was going to have to actually stop out. I didn't. I came back. I covered. Ended up being a 15K win. So it was a great win. So that was the first part of it. The second part of it was Banel, right? If we go to Banel, huge kind of liquidation play. And I wouldn't say huge. The volume wasn't that great, right? But this kind of liquidation play is what I thought top was going to be on this day, right? It's kind of why I lost too big. I kind of got too aggressive. Like I said, again, I go all in detail in April's recap. But what I thought was going to happen in top ended up having in Banel. Again, I'm sure they're separately related, right? They're not really related because Banel didn't run. Banel wasn't everything. A lot of people knew that Banel was kind of the sketchy stock that eventually was going to have some kind of day like this, but it didn't run when top ran. So for whatever reason, it dumped instead. Now, how did I even come across it when I was driving? Because yes, I did enter the trade when I was driving. I had Jack next to me. So so again, to add to the complexity, I guess I have to go intraday here. Again, I had no idea it was even going to go. I was driving. I only had HDII on as a position. I'm like, you know what? I'm driving. I'm already crazy enough to be in a trade while I'm driving, let alone entering a new one. So why on earth did I ever actually get into this trade? Let alone so convicted, again, on my phone that this is going to dump like it did. This is a little funny picture. Me and Kellogg, Huddy, Dom, and Jack Schwartz, we were in Palm Springs for the weekend. And so we had to drive back. We had to get this guy, Kellogg, to his flight. Dom's actually in the back seat. You can see his suitcase right there. But I'm driving, and he's there. so it's like if Kellogg wasn't in the car with me, I probably wouldn't have taken the trade. Now, granted, he didn't ever take my phone from me. It's not like he placed the trades for me. He was trading himself, and he's like, yeah, I'm getting short Banel. And I look at the chart real quick, and I'm like, I want to get short Banel. And so again, this is my Tesla here. I put it on autopilot real quick, couple seconds. Enter a couple trades, put it back, and I'm done, etc. So very wild. I really, after it's easy for me to say hindsight, oh my gosh, I made so much money driving. This is the best thing ever. But honestly, in the moment, I was like, Kyle, this is so stupid. Like, if you stop out on these, you're an idiot. Like, you shouldn't. You just don't need to be doing this. So take that with a very grain of salt, guys. I really don't plan on doing that ever again. Again, I probably only did it, like I said, because Kellogg was there to even be able to look at the charts for me. Like, the 99.9% of the time. Otherwise, I was just asking him, where's this trading at? What's the bid? What's the ask? He was like my eyes for the most part. So if we go into my trades, let's actually get that out of there because that's just going to keep popping up. Banel here. So he's like, I'm short Banel. I'm like, okay. Again, immediately in the first part, I'm like, it doesn't really, there's no action. But then I keep seeing and you can barely see it because the volume gets so big. But before the volume got big, again, Jack as my eyes was just like there was selling. There was, again, if today was going to be the day, the volume started increasing just slightly. So I wanted to put a starter on. Once the volume actually came in, you actually started seeing these bigger green candles. That's when I kind of got the A-OK from Kellogg, right? That if I'm going to do it, this is where it is. And then I'm going to risk red-green pretty much. And it worked. It worked out very well. Like, again, I even hate that it played out well like this, because it played out probably so good in terms of, like, it couldn't have gone better for the situation I was personally in, right? If it was any more choppy, if there's any more a squeeze and then a dump, any more trickiness to it, I would have been all screwed up, right? I've taken a loss. I probably wouldn't have reshorted, etc. So really, I just really got lucky in a lot of ways that it just worked well. This little ad here, I filled maybe like 50, 100 shares. It definitely was not anything substantial. I wanted to fill substantially, if I'm being honest. I remember trying to enter more, but it just didn't fill. It was too quick. Faded lower. Finally, after all this, I get home and I just cover as it's going sideways, and I make like 44K on this trade. So yeah, just even me saying that, guys, I'm like, again, hopefully you understand how, like, I feel flustered talking about it, because I'm looking back and I'm like, I can't believe I did this. But it worked. I got lucky. Would I do it again? Maybe. Should I have been smaller? Probably, because again, I got lucky in the fact that it worked out so well, so straightforward, like that. From, again, my situation of driving, and if it was any more complex, I would have had to cover and then not be able to look, not be able to do anything, or I'd give my phone to Jack. But it's like, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I want to trade my own money. I'm not going to like give my account to someone who's just there. Even though Kellogg's a great trader, but it's like, yeah, he's not, he's legally or obligated, doesn't need to trade for me, right? So anyways, I'm babbling on, but kind of wild. So got lucky that way, worked out great. But again, it was a good setup, right? Like, everyone was still looking at top, everyone's still looking at all these other sympathy runners, and meanwhile, Banel, having not taken part in any of it, just sells off smoothly. So that was really cool. The next thing on that, in terms of GDC, right, I'd mentioned, so the GDC was another one that, again, took part in this kind of madness. And I don't remember what it was, but I just completely ignored it this day, which is so odd, because it literally looks like HDII, right? If we go back to the daily chart, looks just like it. Huge green day, huge gap down, huge red day, right? Huge green day. I should have been watching this day for it to fade and get short. Oddly enough, I just didn't. I remember not even looking at this intraday chart until, like, it was way too late and it was sold off way too far, way too sold off. I'm like, what on earth am I doing, right? And so the FOMO kicked in. I thought to myself, man, if this gaps up at all the next day, I want to get short for it to fade. Now, looking at the daily chart, yeah, it looks nice, like getting into short any one of these spikes and it pulls back, like, yeah, you would have made money. But the timing of it was so much more difficult for me that I ended up actually losing more than I wanted to. So if we go into the intraday here it is. And actually, okay, you can see the fade here. I mean, just beautiful, right? I mean, you could have missed this full huge panic, got short in any one of these balances, and still made another 50% of your money. Just absolutely insane, right? So when I had kind of FOMO, I was like, oh man, if they gap this up and at all into this resistance, like, I want to fade it. Now, of course, I let the overeagerness or the excitedness of me get the best of me, right? And I see this little gap of it closed at what, 380. It opens up at 480. I'm like, oh, gap up. Here we go. I'm going to get short. Like, stupid. It's a dollar gap up a share, and it's sold off 90% from its highs just a couple days ago. Like, that's not the gap up I really should have been waiting for. But what do you do? What do I do? I'm shorting. If you go to my trades here, I literally start in here. I mean, terrible. And again, looking at hindsight, I'm like, it was such an awful idea. I mean, it could have been a decent idea if I waited for the open, because yeah, it could have just like done a little small spike and then stuffed and then faded back to $3, and it would have been a very fairly easy trade. But not even waiting for the open to see that price action give me hints that it's going to do that and just get short pre-market, I can't help but look back at this trade. I'm like, Kyle, you let your FOMO or your fear of already missed out on the fade before get to you here. And so it spiked. I then took full size and then broke that spike high. I covered it for like a 5K loss. So again, this size was very small, thankfully. But then I tried to give it more tries. Right, gave it a try here, squeezed again, cut it, gave it a try here. and even this try here I don't like because I really didn't cut it anywhere meaningful. I just didn't like that it was going to try to retest this VWAP level, even though it kept holding. And in fact, it held, it tested one more time over and then faded again. And this was the actual move I was looking for to get short for, why I entered here. But again, I was tilted. I already knew I screwed up. Would have been so much better had I just waited and been patient, and it could have shorted into this level at all. Because it would have been a much better gain, just a much better risk reward and safer trade. But again, I was tilted at this point. I lost 10 grand on it. I was pissed. But it is what it is, right? You win some, you lose some. I unfortunately, you give it too many tries or a couple more tries than you want, and you lose more than you want, which was 10 grand. So, but again, 10 grand is also not deathly to me, right? Like you said, go watch April. I lost over 100. But on that same day, and what kind of saved the day to make me green on the day was ALTX. So if we go to ALTX here, this one's a little bit different in the sense that the volume was very, very low. You can actually see it on the daily chart here, right? It had plenty of volume when it was under $20, but then something happened here. I don't know what it was. I never actually looked at the news, but it clearly just totally killed the volume. But that doesn't mean it killed the run. If you look back here, every time it's ran, it has huge, solid red days and great backsides. Even here, and so when I saw it do it with little volume compared to bigger volume, I knew if we kept going higher here, we could also do it again. And so when we have the biggest run of them all from, call it 16, 17, 18 to the $20 break, or 20, was it $24, $25 breakout, all the way to 45, I'm now watching this because I'm like, once this turns, we're going to have a really good red day, like a really solid, lots of range red day. And that's exactly what we did. So if we go into my trades here, I got short after that's going red. Now, if you've watched my recaps for a long time, you know I like shorting at red green, but only when it's really meaningful. And in ATLX's case, it really wasn't that meaningful. Because it did, again, I say that because it did technically break red green the day before, right? So it had a huge green day, not huge, but it had another green day to extend itself. Gapped up quite large, pulled, went red, and then came back. So, and again, there's many days in the run-up where it actually goes red-green and then comes back, and vice versa. So I wasn't too amped about it, right? I didn't really like that as a level or as a spot to get short, but I just kind of had to trust it in some ways. Like there's some entries I don't necessarily feel good about. There's some entries where I'll hit it, and I'm like, yep, this is the entry I want. This is the entry I'm the best entry I'm ever going to get. I need to get in now. This one I entered, I kind of was just very iffy about it. But I just knew if it went lower, I was going to regret not taking it there. Even though I knew red-green wasn't really the trigger, I had to kind of just give it a second chance. And I think the one thing that gave me some kind of conviction was that it did open up at the highs from the previous day and failed immediately, right? It's almost as if like this was kind of a double top. Or a triple top if you want to call it. Really a quadruple top, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 here. So 45 was just a good risk level. So regardless where I entered, I mean, whether it was 44, 43, 42, 40, 45 was that kind of convicted level if I want to risk off it, okay? So that's kind of why I gave myself some conviction to even enter in the first place. So if we go here, so I got short. And quickly, once it actually went red for officially and held, then we start panicking. And we actually have some volume coming in. Now, this bounce was not the most comfortable to go through, right? But I stayed in it because, like I said, let's go back to the daily chart. I had also conviction that once it does have a backside move, once it is going to have officially a very strong first red day, it's going to be big. It's going to have a large range, right? This one went from 16 down to 10. That's a 30% red day. This one went from 20 down to 14. That's a 30% red day. This one, 19 to 13, also like a 25 or so percent red day. So it's like I was expecting, like this thing needs to go, this thing not needs to, but it should do 20 or 30%. And so when it did, or I guess not when it did, when it was bouncing, I said, yeah, no, I'm going to stick to my plan. Like I'm going to stick to the characteristics of this stock, and I'm going to wait to cover when it's down that much. And so what happened? I just needed to give it a few hours or a couple hours, and it did that. So again, if we go to the trades, I didn't cover any here. I then covered some into this panic, reshorted this bounce, and then covered for a small, I think $1, $1.50 of gain. But really the majority of it came here. Ultimately, on the tire trade, I made 18,000, so pretty sweet. Really happy with this trade. Unfortunately, I actually didn't even trade it at all the next day here. I should have, but ultimately it went much lower than I expected because I think a short report came out about it. I think someone reported that this thing's pretty much just a scam or a pump and dump. So the next day, it went even lower. It went another, $15 a share from 30 down to 15. Just quite epic. I didn't even trade it then. I wish I did, right? But again, a lot of great range. Even the bounce short here was good. I remember butchering this. I remember not making much here either, but just overall great trader. So glad I made some money there. But then the mother of all days on the 4th here was top, right? That was the moneymaker here. The one that I lost so big on, on this day, ultimately led to me making it all back and maybe a couple grand or so more once it came to here. Now, what on earth happened? So I was also trading on my phone. Why? Because I wasn't in a car. I was on a plane. I was flying with my girlfriend to Austin, Texas. That's where she's from, where we go there sometimes. And normally when we travel, regardless whether I'm driving, flying, I'm trying to pick my schedule as best around the stock market hours, right? Clearly. Now, if I knew in advance that a certain day was not going to be busy or a certain day wasn't going to be, exciting or packed, then I'm like, yeah, take off. If it's going to be boring, I'll leave. But a lot of times you can't tell. You don't know in a week's time what opportunity you're going to get. Any opportunity can come out of the middle of nowhere, right? And so unfortunately, I booked these flights like 2 weeks in advance, and I just thought to myself, like, I usually book my flights later in the day so I don't miss at least the open. Like, at least I can trade the first hour or two. But unfortunately, it was either getting on a plane at open or getting on a plane at like 3 or 4 p.m., like way too late of days. There was nothing in the middle. And so I was like, damn it, I'm going to gamble and go with the flight out the open and just risk missing the day and or hoping there's good Wi-Fi in the plane and just seeing and watching there. And so as the market opens, and I'm now sitting in my seat in my plane, I was at Alaskan Airlines. Pro tip, at least in my experience, Alaskan Airlines, really good Wi-Fi. It wasn't the best, right? It's plane Wi-Fi, but I've had other plane Wi-Fis where like you pay and then you don't even get Wi-Fi. Alaskan Airlines, shout out to you guys. Your Wi-Fi was great for $8 too, which is cheap. Anyways, so I pay for it. I'm just watching. I'm watching the markets, not seeing anything great. I'm like, okay, I don't have to feel FOMO or like I'm missing anything. And then I see top, right? And then this starts, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I like immediate feeling of regret that I am flying right now. But again, this is now an hour into the flight, and I've used the Wi-Fi. I'm like, you know what? The Wi-Fi is stable here. Like the Wi-Fi is good. I feel safe trading off this thing. I'm going to do it again. So like to get it, it's like I just get more insane. First a car, now a plane. I guess next I need to do like a boat, right? Just to go full circle of all forms of transportation. Maybe like a subway next, go on like a train or something. But here's the trades here from my phone. And again, I'm super late here, guys. Now, why am I super late? Because I've also tried to be super early. And when I was super early, guess what happened? I lost 100 grand on top. Okay. So I knew that once top was going to liquidate, once it was going to really sell back down to where it came from, I'd rather be, call it 10, 20, 30% late than being 10, 20, 30% early and then having it squeeze my brains out, right? Which is what happened last April or last month in April. So I ended up getting short here. Now, how do you have any conviction, right? Like I look at this trade and I'm thinking to myself as well, like, well, Kyle, what the hell are you risking, right? Where on earth can you even short here and feel comfortable risking? Well, for me, it was a scaling in idea where it's like, as long as it kept working for me, I had no reason to cut and or when I started in my position size, or my risk is very wide. But then as I added more, I just lowered my size down. So when I first took these two arrows here, my risk was red-green. Like very wide, very, very wide. And yeah, I was going to lose another 10, 20, 30 grand if I had stopped out there. And as I'm adding here, I'm just slowly lowering it. So then I lower it to like this level. By the time I'm full size down here, which again, I don't really like this last candle, I'm pretty much risking VWAP. I'm like, if it gets all the way to VWAP and breaks it, then I'm like, you know what? Congrats to them after all this volume, all this liquidation, all this, all the bag holders now that are up from, call it the hundreds place or like, go to the daily that are all up in here. pretty much anyone above 100, really. Like all these people up here are bagged. This is liquidating. The only reason why they got to squeeze this much in the first place is so they end up selling shares from that either, I don't know if it's insiders or promoters, whoever they are, someone had shares to sell. Hence why this thing just straight up panics with zero to little bouncing. Now, eventually it does bounce, but once it started fading off, I now knew this bounce high was probably going to be it, and I moved my risk to there. Did I add any more? No. Again, I'm on my flight. I've reserved all the shares I could. That's all I really wanted to take. And then it just keeps going and going and going. Finally, I get back. We land. I forget when I land. I think I land around here. I get back to set up an actual desk, right? Here, watch into the close. Willing to swing it, but rather preferably not. I just wanted to see how low it could get. And if it was going to go just sideways like this, I would have just stayed on it. And actually, I would have swung it. I would have been okay swinging it, considering I now had like in the 40s entries and it's down at 20. But once it panicked even lower, another, call it, 40, 50% from, call it 16 down to 10, I was like, yep, we're going to take it here. Like I'm not going to be overly greedy. I don't care to time the exact bottom. It ended up work out in my favor and being the bottom of the day. So that's what really brought a lot of extra gains to that trade there specifically. Just being lucky and being willing to swing and ended up not having to swing. So that was really, really cool. In terms of the next day after that, I did make some more money as well. But I also lost some as well. So after the main dump happens, that was it. I made 120 grand on that day. I made, I believe, a decent amount this day too. Getting shorting up in here, covering down in here. But then this day, I remember losing like 4 or 5K here. Just after the main few dumps happen, the first day or the second day, every day after that just gets more choppy, less range. Clearly, like they can't just have every day have massive range, right? Eventually the range dissipates and gets smaller and smaller. So I lost a little bit here. And I think that was pretty much it, right? So yeah, that was it. So like really it was Banel, it was HDII, and then it was top, giving me a full on, 180K week, which ended up being the month. Now in terms of other trades that were just small that were notable, BBBYQ, once this thing has gone bankrupt now in the OTC market, I did that on, I believe, this day I think it was May 3rd. Didn't really have any super eagerness to trade it until I saw this wick and then see it, instead of, when you see this wick, I think the next day is going to be red, or at least it's not going to even come close to getting in this range, because a wick kind of resembles like something like this, right? Where it's like there was clearly a lot of selling. Next day, there's probably to be more, or there's just longs now bag holding or down in their position or underwater, and they want to sell too, or there's more selling to come around. So when it didn't do that, I thought to myself, okay, that's a kind of a cool looking chart. There's been a lot of good charts in the past that have this look where instead of going down, they actually go up, and it kind of catches either shorts off guard or it catches longs who have sold, want to get back in, etc. For whatever the reason, I liked the chart. I was like, I want to get long. So if we go in here, because then it becomes kind of a little mini day breakout, right? It becomes like a 2 or 3 day breakout right here, right? And so I was watching this. So once it broke over this like 13 high, I was like, yep, I want in. So I ended up buying right into the close. Ended up getting a great gap up over the breakout level of 15 cents, 15 and a half cents. I believe I added right out the open because it was just a starter. I wish I had more, but I was no problem adding here. Held all day long. I believe I added again into the late day. Let me look at my trades. I don't even remember if I sold some into the close, but I know I remember I sold it all the rest of the day. Okay, here's my top trade. Sorry to go back in the video, but here's where I lost a few grand on here, just getting chopped up. But anyways, let's go to BBYQ. So yeah, longed to the close, longed out the open, sold a little bit, relonged, or bought more, I should say. Bought back what I sold, and then sold some in there. And then unfortunately, once it went red for the first time in this run up, I sold the rest there. So ultimately ended up making, was it 12K on that long? So pretty sweet long. I've noticed a trend here that if I nail a long recently, like it's usually a pretty good high 4 or low 5 figure trade, which is really uncharacteristical of me. Like many long trades for me are usually not that good. I'm not the best long trader by any means. My short profits are significantly higher, right? But yeah, this year's been pretty good for me in terms of longing, in terms of not necessarily winning a lot of them, but when I do make a good one, it ends up being a really good trade. So I'm really happy about that. In terms of week 3, just the 17th and the 18th was me actually trading TIO. TIO, I had the trades up here. This was just the day I nailed the first red day. This was also on my phone. When I went through Italy, we were in a huge tour guide of 40 of us, and we'd go on a bus. We never took a train anywhere. We'd do a huge bus ride everywhere. And so I actually was on the bus when the market was open. So I just got on my phone. I shorted this first red day. It was pretty nice. Made 8K or so. But I lost 4K on the day prior on the same ticker. It was just going up. I had a green day the day before, red day that day. So I ended up making a little under double what I had lost. So ended up 3K on that week. And then the last 2 days of the month here were a little bit frustrating, mainly because I just gave back the gains I had on Monday. The gains from Monday were from Veng. So for those who watched my January recap, Vang was a former OTC promotion. Still is an OTC promotion, but it got crushed. It got killed. And I got I was very prepared, but also, again, I think I mentioned in the video, I was also somewhat lucky in the timing of it all, that it just got a huge dump this particular day, getting the CE. So this is still my biggest gain of the year here. And once it got rid of the CE, once the CE got kind of taken off its profile, if you want to call it that, it repumped immediately. And I wasn't too stoked about this because I really wanted to go higher. The high was only 3. I really wanted this to go to like 4 or 5. Really get more in this range before it really, or when it reopened here. Not reopened, when it opened after the CE up in the 6s really. But I would have loved just 4 or 5. I wasn't going to get greedy and hoping for 6. But once it started dying again, I thought to myself, this is weak. I'll take a short and risk the highs now. And so I took a small short in the 220s, 230s. Ended up working. The next day was nice. Faded it down to here. Ended up covering on this day. Now you might ask, why did I cover this green day and not any of these, right? Because clearly any one of these look like they're bouncing. Mainly because my goal was below $1. And so once it went below $1, and I thought to myself, let me give it a few more days, try to get like 70, 60 cents, like a little bit more fading. And then it came back over $1. I was like, that's kind of odd. But I usually don't see a promotion or a pump that's like dead or that's sold off as much as this has, really recover strongly in the way it did, the way I was watching it. And again, look how much volume was coming in this day compared to previous bounce days, right? I just thought to myself, this looks stronger than normal. I'm just going to cover it, which is why you see my cover here, right? I just cover it, unfortunately, over $1. So I ironically, again, back to when I was saying with, what ticker was it? Or it was top, where it's like I'm not looking to take the entire meat of the move. I'm not looking to time the bottom, and it ends up resulting in timing the bottom. Here I am trying to be greedy for another, call it 10, 20 cents on Vang, trying to get the bottom, and ultimately leads to me giving money back, right? So it's very counterintuitive that way. I should have just taken it, but whatever. I only gave, call it 15 cents back of profit. And honestly, it's for the better because I bounced the next 3 days after that. So no idea what it does for now. If it really bounces, if it keeps going back to 3, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. But I think that's probably unlikely. I bet you this probably just chops around a little bit, and maybe, in 6 months, it's going to be back down to 50 cents, right? But yeah, that's that. In terms of what gave back those gains, right? What happened on the 31st? Unfortunately, SDA, I got pretty trapped on. Not trapped, I should say, just a quite impressive move. All these wicks you see are not misprints. This thing is actually that volatile. If we go into the intraday here, again, I thought this was going to be a similar kind of liquidation sell-off day, mainly because I just saw the action, right? I've seen enough of these plays now where it's like I don't even need to know if there's insiders selling or if there's a chat room telling people to buy, whatever it is. Like a lot of times you can just see the action, you can see the tape, you can see the volume, and I get a feel for it. And so when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is really selling off. This was a D-SPAC. And for those who've seen D-SPACs as a common trend, some of these, D-SPACs start at 10, but they dump. They go to like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Holo was one. I feel there's another ticker that was recent. I think Turo was one, TURO. Anyways, so I was like, great, this thing is selling off. If this thing keeps on selling, like this will fade pretty low. Unfortunately, it didn't. It actually came back very impressively. So again, unfortunately, I would have loved to get short more in the 20s. I just missed it. I just wasn't paying attention. But again, similar to top, it doesn't scare me from chasing a little bit, as long as I know where I need to be risking. And for me, it was going to be red-green. So that's why you see me at the cutting. The fact that it came back here was just really impressive. But you also notice how the volume kind of died down here. It's not a sure sign that means it's coming back, but it makes sense in hindsight. So it's not really something I could have changed in any way. But cut it there. Tried it again, cut it again for about break even there. But ultimately, I lost 25 grand on this one, which sucks. But again, that's also what I was willing to lose. Like, again, if you saw me talk about top, if at top bounced and I stopped out where I kept moving my risk level down, like I said, I was willing to lose 20, 30, maybe even 40 if there was some bad slippage on the trade. Okay. So I lost 25 on this cut. Perfectly fine. I'll take this trade 10 out of 10 times. This is a very unique one that actually recovered and came back. Not only did it recover, it ended up making new highs and just incredible recovery. And I actually ended up longing. I took like 1,000 shares long at 25 here and ended up selling it in the 30s. So really great, just acknowledging that this was such a tough short that it's actually worth giving it a chance. So I did. I actually made like 11K back. So ultimately leads to me being down 17K on the day. I think I lost small on something else, but it was irrelevant. It was a small trade. But again, ultimately leading to these last 4 weeks being pretty much break even. I guess paying for these borrow fees, if you want to call it that. And then the first week was the entire month. So, and one thing to know is like my win rate really wasn't that high, right? I typically have a 50 or 60% win rate. So to have 40 is definitely on the low end. But, if you have good risk reward, like I had, right? My average gain was just under 4 times the size of my average loss. You could have a win rate of 30%, 25% really. I mean, 25% win rate would have probably get me break even, roughly, call it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. That's the month. Starting off June pretty decently, up 10K for the first 2 days, 5K each. So that's pretty cool. But again, we'll see how the next few months go. We have kind of officially entered summer trading, in my opinion, where I haven't had some of the best months, and I talked about this on Wine Wednesday with all the boys from Clover Trading, that June and July and August, especially August, has been tough for me. But June and July, I'm usually given like 1 or 2 opportunities a month that are usually pretty good. Now, does that mean it has to happen again? No. But I just noticed it can be tougher. Summer can be tougher. A lot of traders take off. And so just something to watch out for. So that's something I will be keeping an eye on, seeing how that goes. Other than that, guys, thanks so much for watching. I know this month was quite unique. I will never forget this month of going from a car to a plane and then making well above an average salary. Quite nuts. Like I said, don't really want to do it again. It wasn't really worth the stress. I guess it was. In hindsight, it is worth the stress. It wouldn't have been worth the stress if I had taken losses, right? So easy double-edged sword there. But anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you guys next month. Take it easy. Enjoy your summer. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Bye.